Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Talking Grit is brought to you by the Monroe County Reporters, Monroe's top news source for police, fire, and community events.
Post 3, Depot Street, truck boy at
Follow them on Facebook, and for $2.99 a month, you can become a subscriber and get the news you crave even faster.
Welcome to another episode of Talking Grit. I'm Jason Harwood, and with me is Jacob Litton. Without an upcoming game, we thought we'd do a quarterly review here. Just like an accountant, we're just going to count the checks here. We're going to be a bean counter, right, Jacob?
I knew it was coming. I knew you were going to say it.
We've decided to invite a guest.
Time out.
What?
Morgan, do you know what a bean counter is? Have you heard that before ever in your life?
Is that another term for an accountant?
Yeah.
He kind of led you into that, but yes.
I did.
But you've never heard that before, right?
I don't. Maybe like in a book or something. I read a lot, so maybe in like one of my old books.
He's just trying to make you not feel bad.
Yeah, I know.
That's off the wall.
Yeah. Sorry. It's
Sorry.
my name of my
Continue.
my name of my fantasy football team for a reason. Bean counters.
Yeah.
Because of that. All right. We've decided to invite a guest some of you may be familiar with. It's Morgan Cannon from the Pride of Detroit. I personally am a huge fan of his work. He's been helping me with learning how to do film, and he's been a mentor for me for that. So I really appreciate him coming on. So thank you, Morgan, for showing up. And I think Jacob's got a question to start this off on.
Yeah, with most of the guests that we have on, we like to ask a question just to kind of see how long you've been a fan. So what we're going to ask you is who was your first Detroit Lions jersey that you ever had?
Oh, I'm easy for me. And appreciate y'all having me. Of course, excited to be on. Mine's Barry. I was born in 1990. Was born into this and everything. Like dad being from Flint and everything. So, Barry. But I've had all kinds of them through the years. You know what I mean? Just like all of us. But yeah. Probably a generic answer, kind of chalky, right?
That's like the classic one.
I mean,
who is the quarterback of the team? I know Barry's your first jersey, but if you think about when you first started watching every week, when you were really into it, when you were all about it, who was the quarterback that was playing?
Shoot, man, I remember them all because I got a weird brain, like Eric Kramer, Rodney Peete, Scott Mitchell, so like going through that whole, like just kind of rolling through the 90s there. So yeah, Scott Mitchell, right. Probably like when I really became like a little more aware of what was going on. You know what I mean? Like I started playing at 6, 7 years old, and you start to pick up, you're like, oh, okay, like this is why this is happening. And it becomes a little more technical,
Right.
So yeah, good old Scott Mitchell.
Yes. Yes, we've talked about him on the podcast before. Actually, Jeremy, your cohort over at Pride of Detroit, that's who he mentioned. And he had a different, a lot of people just think down on Scott Mitchell, but Jeremy didn't think of him that way. Obviously, he didn't bring anything of note to Detroit, but, he had positive thoughts about Scott Mitchell. Most Lions fans, you ask about Scott Mitchell, and, the first thing you hear is a groan or something like that.
I mean, he's a fine quarterback. That's kind of how, I look at it. Everything revolved around Barry, and that was an era of football that we were in. But yeah, Scott Mitchell was fine. Nothing too bad.
So Jacob was a little too young for the Barry Sanders era. And, I can't ever tell him how it was to watch a game. I have never found the words to explain how it was to watch a game that Barry played in, like live, when you didn't know it was going to be a highlight play. You knew one was coming. You just didn't know when. And it was just like that anticipation of 2 yards here, 3 yards here. Oh, he just busted a 50-yarder or whatever he did. And, is there any player that's gave you that same experience in the NFL that Barry did?
Don't know. Not since maybe Dante Hall for that little period of time. Remember Dante Hall, the punt returner for the Chiefs?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Joystick, right?
He was electric to watch, but Barry, man, I just remember one of my first seared in football memories was Thanksgiving 1997. We were playing the Bears, and we beat them 55-20. like Barry had like 4 touchdowns, like ran for like, I think almost 200 yards off the top. And I remember because we would record games like over like random VHS tapes. Y'all remember you used to do that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so we would have that, and I probably watched that thing so many times, man. A little bored, I would just watch that like a movie, put it in, watch it, and that's where like probably my parents should have been like, yeah, this man's a little sick in the head here. What's he watch this football game over and over for? But yeah, no, Barry was the best, man. A couple years ago, my ticket rep, who like was like my friend from when I worked at the YMCA downtown for the Lions, he was like, hey man, could you be ready for this, like to get on a Zoom call? This is like kind of COVID times, right? Like that year, the Thanksgiving game when we got killed by the Texans, right? The day before Patricia and Quinn got fired.
Mm-hmm.
They got me on like a Zoom call earlier in that week, and it was Barry, man. He like talked to like several different fans, like, one-on-one. So that was just cool too. Like that's always going to be my goat. Like if y'all remember that magazine cover from like, it's up there framed, but one of my friends had that done for me. So yeah, definitely my goat, man. That's like that was my everything as a little kid.
Yeah. My little brother just thought he was Barry Sanders on the football field. He was just, trying to emulate every juke and every spin. Growing up in the 90s and seeing him was just an unreal time. It's excitement every game, even though the team was, every other year they would make the playoffs. They would make the playoffs, disappointment, make the playoffs, and, ultimately led to Barry wanting to leave, or be done. It's hard to explain to anybody that wasn't watching game at that time, like how exciting it was to watch just a normal run and just anticipate what was going to happen.
And he had like the perfect running back aesthetic, like there was that time back in the day where he wore the like they don't allow it anymore because of concussion, but he wore the reflective visor. And man, like some of the coldest like sports like photos back in the day were like, him standing in the backfield, like, behind the quarterback, and just, you could see everything on his visor. I'm like, that's a cold.
Right.
He's just awesome, man. Just an awesome running back. Fun to watch. That's just my dude. I still have the Barry, like the Mitchell and Ness. Love that. That's just my goat, man.
Right.
Yeah. Nah, everyone our age goat. He's the man. All right. Let's talk about this current iteration of the Lions. Really simple question. We're going to start out with you, Morgan. Going into this bye, we're 3-1. Are you happy with that? Are you satisfied with a 3-1 start to the season?
Yeah, I think so. Like if you'd asked me before this, like, obviously 4-0 would have been nice, but this is a pretty tough start. Like you ran it back with the Rams and the Bucks. Like both of those teams look like, well, the Rams, I think, are a little derailed right now because of injuries, and they're just, I don't know about them, but the Bucks are looking good. I think they're like, last I saw before I turned the TV off, they were in a shootout with Atlanta. Glad I took the over for that one, because I don't know if anyone's punted yet in that game. So yeah, I'm happy about it. You're looking at it 3-1, you come out of the bye, you got Dallas, and you've set yourself up because there's some winnable games here. Like every game in the NFL is tough. Like, don't get me wrong. Like there's a world where the Lions could, you could lose any given Sunday. There's a reason that's a movie, right? So I think it sets you up well, but there's still work to be done. What about y'all though? How do y'all feel about the 3-1 start?
You can go, Jacob.
I'm okay with 3-1 as well, especially when the first two, were those playoff rematches. Like you said, you have those two back to back. If you can, be 1-1 out of that, that's cool. Especially with how the games went. It wasn't like we were overmatched or whatever. I mean, we were killing the game against the Bucks. We did everything except get in the end zone. So, I mean, like you said, obviously 4-0 would have been better, but 3-1 is still a good number. I mean, especially, like I said, we've played 3 of the 4 NFC West teams already. We finally won against the Seahawks, for the first time since 2012. Right. So, I mean, I'm okay. Vibes are still high.
Yeah, I think 3-1 is great. I mean, the only reason you could be disappointed is because we basically dominated the Bucks that whole game and lost it just because we, couldn't get in the end zone for various reasons or whatever. But the defense has looked good 3 out of the 4 games. Like, I'm very happy with the defense, and I'm still thinking that the way they played Seattle was they took the ball. They wanted to get up by a score, and they wanted to play defense a certain way, not let them get over the top, not let DK just dominate and go over the top and worry about that. And I think that was, it's a lot of bend don't break situation, and I really believe that's what they played, and that may be why the defense showed out the way it did. Also, Geno Smith just played an amazing game, and that's, sometimes you could do it all right, and he's going to find an open man. So I'm happy with 3-1. Of course, 4-0 is great, especially like I said about the Bucks. I think that was definitely a winnable game, but we exercised some demons with Seattle, and we've looked. Jared Goff in the last 2 games is just playing. He's checking down and just giving what the defense, is giving him. And it's really weird. The Bucks game, the game we lost, we just didn't run it, and they felt like passing was the way to win that game. The way the other games have played out, it's shown that running it, they could have probably ran and won that game. But I'm going to trust Dan Campbell and company. They've done us well so far. So. All right.
I think they've earned that. You know what I mean? Like, I think when you look at the context too, like, I feel even better about 3-1, like y'all said, because they didn't play their best game against the Rams or the Bucks. And like you talked about, they dominated the Bucks in the box score. They just didn't, 1 for 7 from the red zone. We've heard it all before. And then, the defensive performances have been good. And I think there's a lot of context you have to add around the Seahawks game just because they were on the field for 90 plays. I'm about halfway through the film. Like, that second half felt like a marathon. And I think that's when they started busting some of those Kenneth Walker runs, was when the defense was just gassed because they were on the field a lot. Like, even when the Lions are scoring, like the Jameson Williams 1 play drive, they could have used some time off. The defense could have used a little bit more of a breather there instead of they got a quick strike. And you're not going to complain about 7 points, but you know what I mean? So it all matters. That's kind of how I look at it, right?
Yeah,
For sure.
And the bye week is, we were all arguing, at the beginning of the year, we hated when the schedule come out, we got the early bye week, but with the injuries of late, it may work out in our favor. Speaking of injuries, our next 4 games are going to be at Dallas, at Minnesota, versus the Titans, and at Green Bay. Dallas is a team that's going to be fighting some major injuries, so we're probably catching them at a very good time. They're going to be without probably their 2 best defenders for that game. So in a similar vein of, we're 3-1 with those games, what record are you going to be happy with if we come out at, especially we got 2 division games on the road. So Morgan, we'll start with you. What record would you be happy with just looking at those 4 games?
So there's some tough games, right? Like the Titans they've played some good football here and there, minus Will Levis just going absolutely bonkers and doing crazy things with the football. So I think I wouldn't be mad at 2-2. I wouldn't be mad there. You're still in a good position moving forward. I'd be happier with 3-1 again. You repeat that, you're at 6-2, and then you're kind of in the driver's seat to determine where you're going to be with playoff seeding, right? And that's where I want this team to be, like firmly in that seat once, the real football starts being played late November on, right? Like where it really, every game counts, but it really begins to count. You guys know what I mean? So I think that's where I'd be. What about y'all?
I'd be happy with 3-1, just like you said, is good. And then that means we're going to probably split one of those division games. I think, Titans at home, it's definitely a winnable game. At Dallas, like I said, I think we're catching them at the right time. They're going to have, and we have to exercise, a bad call from last year, and there's just going to be a lot, that's going to be said. I think the Lions are going to go in there and do that. Maybe we'll get in a little bit when we talk a little bit of the NFC North later on, but you got 2 road division games. At the beginning of the season, we're thinking the Packers are going to be our higher challenger, and that may turn out to be, but Minnesota's 4-0 right now, so you really want to deal them a loss. So if you keep, going 3-1 every quarter, that's a recipe for playoffs and probably a division win. So yeah, 3-1's good. What about you, Jacob?
Absolutely. Obviously, you want to win them all, right? I mean, 3-1, you're fine. 2-2, not ideal, but still okay. 1-3, you're kind of hitting the panic button there. especially how it's playing out. The next game we have at Dallas, like you already mentioned, they're going to be without some of their top defenders. Dallas has the worst rushing offensive attack in the league, and we have a top 5 run defense. So they're going to be throwing the ball a whole lot. Hopefully we have the bye week. We can game plan, try to defend that pass a little more than, how we did it against Seattle. But that should be a very winnable game, as is the game against the Titans. The two really difficult ones, are going to be at the Vikings and at the Packers, those divisional matchups. The Vikings matchup looks a heck of a lot more interesting than it did before the season started. Sam Darnold playing very well right now. The Vikings run defense, I think, is like top 2 in the league or something like that. So that's an interesting matchup to see our rushing attack against their run defense. And, it's interesting because if let's say after those first 3 games, if you go 1-2, like how desperate do we need that Green Bay win at that point? We can't, like I said, you don't want to go 1-3. And especially if we're already doing that, you can't lose to the Packers. So, obviously, ideally, 4-0 is where we want to be at, especially if we can get through and win all 4 of these games and, 3 of the 4 being away. That's huge for the season. And it's, with the team that we have now, it's definitely obtainable. It's not, it's not that we're asking too much. It's not too far out there to suggest that we're going to win these next 4 games against some tough opponents.
Yeah, and this is that stretch of the season where they're on the road a lot. Like when we first got the schedule, we're like, okay, this could be a little bit, they're on the road. There's I think we have 1 home game until December, right, Jason? I think it's something, 2 home games. It's going to be a while. I think, it's like a month.
Well, after this 4-game set, they're at Houston the following week. So it's 4 out of the next 5 are on the road, which.
That's what it was, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a tough stretch. Jets and Vikings, 9:30 a.m. though in London. So that'll be something.
Yeah, right.
It'll be fun to wake up and watch because, that's a gross game if you're a Lions fan because
right. Do you root for Aaron Rodgers or do you,
I know it's God.
You can't ever root for Aaron Rodgers.
I know. That's exactly how I feel. But then I don't want the Vikings to continue.
Yeah,
to go.
Right.
So I think we might have to get on that train for once.
Yeah.
I'll root for Sauce Gardner, Detroit kid.
Yeah, right. There you go.
You get the middle ground. Good job. Yeah. It's gonna. Speaking of that 9:30 football, it is great to wake up. I always think about what it'd be like on the West Coast. You're just you have to set your alarm to wake up for football on Sunday. It's just 1 o'clock is so long to wait because you wake up and you just want football to be here. I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm sure it's just like I feel. Wake up, 8 o'clock with the kids, you take the dog on a walk and you're like, man, I still got 4 hours and, I can only watch, the talking heads talk so much, so I got to figure out something else to do during those 4 hours. But
I have 4 kids.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jacob, you don't have that time. I usually clean my house. That's how I get my energy out.
Yeah, right.
Walk the dogs.
I got to get everything ready so that I can just do nothing but watch football for the rest of Sunday.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Subconsciously, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not looking at your watch the whole time going, okay. All right.
How much time we pass. Yeah.
All right. So on to something that after Monday is going to be a harder question. Jacob, we're going to start with you. Your favorite play so far of all up to this bye week of the season. What's your favorite play that's happened? Could be offensive, defense, special teams, however you want to do it.
Yeah, you're right. There's been quite a few memorable plays already. But I think the favorite, if I had to pick my favorite play, I'm going to go with the shake and bake play, the, hook and ladder that we pulled off against the Cardinals. It just was kind of, it was really unexpected. Just a very cool play. Worked to perfection, scored a touchdown with Gibbs off of it. That was very cool. So it's hard, but that's what I'm going to say is my favorite play so far.
Yeah, that's a good choice. What about you, Morgan?
That's an excellent one. There's so many that are running around in my head. I'm going to go maybe recency bias, but the catch that Monty had where he planted Devin Witherspoon, man.
Yeah.
Watching that live, you're like, hold on now. And then he kept on running, and that man's running it popped into my head this week when I was watching the film. It's got some Marshawn Lynch to him, man. The way he's running the ball, the jump cuts. the acceleration and then just being able to baptize you if you get in his way. So I love it. Yeah, that's probably my favorite this so far. I love some physical
Good call.
football.
Yep, you're right on it, Morgan. I'm gonna say that is my favorite play, and I think it's awesome that it's 4 games in season and we can like have so many different plays to choose from. It's been, that JMO 70-yard touchdown. That I mean, on any given other team, that's the play, right? And like that might have been the third best offensive play of that game because you've got a Goff Philly special coming out. I mean, that how cool is that? I mean, you got a Amon out throwing a dot, and so there's just in that game alone. And then Jacob, you're right, the hook and ladder play. It's
Butter.
like, how can that be even an afterthought? Like, because that's like, I go back to that hook and ladder play against Green Bay because that's where the first time we saw it, it was ran a little bit different than what we saw, in Arizona game. But we've run it before and it worked really well in Green Bay. That was like a 3rd and like 20, and I think we got like 4th and 3, and that's when he threw to DJ Chark, and we end up icing that game after that play. So there's so many cool plays, and defensively, we haven't talked about any of Kirby's interceptions. The last one especially was just an incredible catch. And,
Right.
We talked about it on our recap, Jacob, that it was very Megatron-esque. He high pointed it and then brought it in. I mean, that was just a great catch.
Yeah,
And
he's an athlete.
Yeah,
Incredible
for sure.
athlete.
And love the way Kirby's playing so far this year. It's been
Become
very
a complete
refreshing.
safety.
He is. And
Yes.
I don't know if it's like he's just trusting the other guys around him to make a play, so he's setting himself up. Whereas maybe last year he's trying to, anticipate too much and just because he would find himself out of position, and it might lead to some big plays just over his head because he's out of position. We really, outside of Carlton Davis, I don't know. We haven't really let a lot of receivers get over the top on us this season. DK Metcalf got by CD and got tackled at the 1 in this last game. But I know Marvis and Harrison had one on CD in the end zone, but they haven't burned us really deep this year. So, we've gotten cooked underneath a lot, but that just might be how they're choosing to do it. So, all right. Morgan, we'll start with you on this one. Offensive MVP so far this year, or so far up to this year, to the bye week.
Mm-hmm. Got to go David Montgomery. Just he's so essential to the team's identity and the way, like, obviously you could pick, like, I'm probably the biggest Penei Sewell fan there is. Like, I was jumping for joy when the Lions drafted him. I thought, like, I'm not even one who follows recruiting like that, but I know, like, I'm a little bit tapped in, and I heard about this 17-year-old starting at Oregon as a freshman, and I was like, oh my gosh, this kid's going to be, and he hasn't let us down. But yeah, I think I got to go Monty, just because of, like, the drive against the Rams, the game against Seattle. He had the crazy game, against Arizona, obviously. So I think Monty. How about y'all?
Yeah, I went with the same. I picked David Montgomery as well. I mean, you just have to. Like you said, against the Rams, like, he just took over in overtime. Just those tough runs, that he's just been so consistent with. You already mentioned the catch, the Seattle game. He's just big plays. Every time you give him the ball, you just trust him. No turnovers, no, like, close calls or anything like that. Short yardage situations. He's just been on so far this year. So definitely gets my vote as well.
So I'm with you guys. But when I started looking at the stats, I just have a question for you guys. The overtime drive alone, just cements him. And then he just plowing, like we said, our offensive play of the year is Demo. And then the carry play where, the defense picks him up and the offensive line push. He's just been the figurehead, and then he didn't show up that much in the Tampa Bay game and we lost that game. So it's just, he's definitely been our MVP, right? But I just looked at Gibbs and I found some interesting stats. Maybe you've looked them up. I don't know. But who do you think's rushed for more yards?
Gibbs.
Gibbs has.
I only know that looking at stats today.
Yeah, so he's
it's close, right?
It is. It's 285 to 271. Just based on my memory from the game, I'd almost say that, Montgomery because we've indicated that he's just more in our brain, but Gibbs has rushed for more yards. And I found this stat incredibly interesting. When you're running between the tackles, which one do we think more of? We think of Demo more than Gibbs, right? We know Gibbs can do it, but what do you think the yards per carry on in between the tackles, the difference between the two is? You got any guess? I'm going to put you on
The difference between them?
Yeah, between Demo and Gibbs.
It's probably
2 yards.
substantial. Yeah, or like 3 or 4, because like I swear, I see Gibbs, like I was watching the film and he's so patient, and that the hole opens up or he sees a crease and he mashes R2, man. He's so fast. It's so incredible. What is
that
it?
one play? The hole was wide open though too.
Yeah.
Yes,
where he just like green
Go.
grass. Just right.
He doesn't waste time though. I give him credit. He just
Yeah.
goes.
Gibbs averaged this is in between the tackles only, 6.5 yards per carry on 20 attempts. Gibbs is 4.2 on 27 attempts. It's
Montgomery is the second one that you said?
It is. Gibbs leads them by 2 yards,
Yeah.
but Gibbs gets some more gash plays, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
Demo's more consistent, but Gibbs gets the big gash plays.
How many more attempts did you say he had?
Like
7 or 8?
more. So
Yeah.
Demo's got 27, Gibbs has got 20. So, Demo's getting, obviously he's just getting more attempts in there. He's just more reliable. He doesn't do a lot of dancing. He just gets in there and goes. You're right. Gibbs is patient and waits for that hole. There was I don't know, I think it was the Seattle game. I don't know the exact play, but there was such a small hole. They showed a replay. It was a really good replay, and we didn't know how Gibbs fit through the hole. And his vision is just unreal.
I like that Ben Johnson overlaps a lot of their usage too, because it just makes defenses like that. There's not a tell when either or is on the field. You know what I mean? It's not like Gibbs is in. Okay, they're running stretch. They're going to try to get him to the edge. Or okay, Montgomery's in. They're gonna run power or duo and try to get him, north and south. There's a lot of overlap, and in my opinion, that's tough to deal with as a defensive coordinator, because you're like, oh, there's not really any tells. They can both do it all, which is nice. It's a luxury.
Yeah, when people describe him as thunder and lightning, obviously Gibbs is faster, but Gibbs can do what Montgomery does. He can go in between the tackles. And I know, Morgan, you and I talked about a certain play, and it was 3rd and 1, goal line. We were in the red zone against the Rams, and Gibbs just gets like 2 yards on the play, but he was trying to run outside and then just knifed up there. The defenders had to respect the speed that he was going to get out the outside, and that just gave him all the leverage. But I'm thinking of like Theo Riddick or someone like in our past would have just tried to go outside and end up not getting that. Whereas Gibbs was smart enough to know I could stretch it and then just knife up. All I need to get is the yard. I don't need to get the touchdown. I need to get the yard so that we can get in the end zone. And that's exactly what happened. They got touchdown on the next play or next couple plays in that, and that was in the Rams game. So it's thunder and lightning does not describe them very, very well. It just doesn't. And you're right. There's no tells. And that's a great point, Morgan. And that's why the offense can be so multiple, because you don't know what they're going to do when they got either one of them in there.
No. And sometimes people try to make fast athletes running backs, and that can work for so long. Shoot, sometimes they're even in the NFL. You're like, but then are they really running backs? Like, you never have that question with Gibbs. Like, he's not the pass protector that Montgomery is, just because Montgomery's stature is crazy, man. He's built like, good Lord, like a powerhouse. But yeah, even Gibbs has stepped up. He's become a better pass protector. And yeah, I know exactly what play you're talking about, Jason. Just puts his foot in the ground, knows the down and distance, knows he needs to move the chains. It's a heady veteran play. And you can just tell, like, well, obviously he played running back under Nick Saban. You better have your stuff together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Can't mess around.
Defensive MVP. This seems like a no-brainer, but we're going to ask the question anyway. Jacob, you get to start this time.
Well, I have my no-brainer answer, but then I have another person who deserves a vote here. So obviously, the defensive MVP has to be Aiden Hutchinson. No doubt about that. Pro Football Focus ranked him number 1 overall in the league leading 6.5 sacks. He had, double-digit quarterback pressures in a couple games. He's got I think it was 15 more pressures than the next highest guy in the league. He's just been dominating, just as expected. He's just every play he's bringing it. There's no quit. There's no giving up. Just really the leader on the defense for us, and I think he just embodies what the Lions team is about. Showing grit and everything. You can't say enough positive things about Hutchinson. And you look at these replays and where he doesn't have a pressure, maybe doesn't have any impact on the stat sheet, but then you look back and you see he's still bringing it every single time. So Hutchinson, obvious defensive MVP. But the other player that I think deserves a vote or deserves a mention is going to be Kirby Joseph. I know, Morgan, you said earlier, he's becoming more of a complete safety. He's really, obviously, early on in the season, but he really has taken that next step. If he's not back there, if he's been injured, he's doing the whole, center field thing, ball hawk, and he's also coming down and, he's making some big plays. He's making some big tackles, some bigger hits, some third down stops. Just a lot of clutch plays from Kirby Joseph so far this year. Pass breakups. I mean, he really, he's been doing it all. So I think he deserves a mention here as well.
I love it. I'm a big Kirby fan, man. I think he's becoming, like you talked about, becoming a complete safety, making plays around the line of scrimmage, being active and run fits. He's, his superpower is always going to be being a ball hawk, playing like that deep, one single high or, middle third, whatever he's in, whatever the defense is in. That's going to be his superpower, but he's had really good reps in man. So yeah, you love to see Kirby's growth. And it really just speaks to this coaching staff because you consistently see people just elevate their game. And speaking to elevating their game, man, Hutchinson was a really good player last year. I watch a lot of tape. He's in that category, like that tier of pass rushers underneath, I would say the elite, right? Like the Myles Garretts, the TJ Watts, Nick Bosa, Parsons, etc. If he puts together a full season of what we're seeing now on tape, yeah, he's in that conversation and he's flirting with being Max Crosby. Sorry, I was forgetting someone earlier. But yeah, he's flirting with that because when you turn it on, man, he is a game wrecker. He has that spin move, which is pretty much unblockable now. He'll hit it to the outside. He'll hit it to the inside. Then his hands are really active, swimming, ripping, just swatting hands and dipping under. He's got pretty good bend too for being a 6'7" guy. And then he sets you all up and these tackles are worried and he has the power. He's gotten a lot stronger since he got here in 2022. Thicker in the legs, just a more powerful athlete. And he hits you with that bull rush. It happened a couple times against Seattle where he walked that tackle back into Gino's lap almost immediately. And it affects people. Even like you said, Jacob, it's something that might not even show up or register as a hurry through Pro Football Reference or PFF or wherever you're looking, but it still affects the play when you turn on the tape and you see how he's, disrupting things.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to add on the whole Aiden thing is I'm noticing him holding the edge better and quarterbacks are not escaping out his way a lot. And that might be just better overall pressure from the defensive line in general. But, I know Justin Fields would just give him fits. Aiden would do the inside spin move and Justin would see that and he'd run right to the outside. We've faced Kyler Murray, who's, he fairly good athlete. So, and we kept him in check. Gino, the only time he escaped to the outside end is when Aiden did an inside spin move and Gino would escape to the outside. I feel like Aiden is holding that edge much better this year, just more responsible, and we're keeping these running quarterbacks in check. So I have noticed that. Everything else, the pressures, the sacks, those are all, high effort plays that, we've come to become accustomed with him. And it's hard to have these superlatives, just said over and over again, but it is true. And I also, your point about Kirby Joseph, Jacob, where would we be without some of those interceptions? That interception in the very first game, that game is totally different if he doesn't pick some off right before the half and they get a touchdown and the Rams get a touchdown. And then, Seattle, that iced the game when he got the interception in that game. So they've all been in the end zone. All his interceptions have been in the end zone. Those are critical in itself. You're keeping the other team from scoring. So, Kirby, you would think it'd be a blowout for Aiden, and it probably is, but Kirby has been very vital to this defense. And I hope he continues to be. I mean, he wanted to lead the league in interceptions this year. He's on a pretty good start for that.
Right.
All right. So we talked pretty glowingly about our defense, but we have had some issues with penalties, mostly in our defensive backfield. So, Morgan, you watch a lot of tape. You're watching, you see a lot of the film. Are you happy with how our cornerbacks are playing? I know the stats are not glowing, but are you happy about how the offensive playing, or should they change their approach so that they don't get as many penalties?
No, I don't think it's something you can alter approach wise. Like Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator, wants to play a lot of man. So in doing so, both Carlton and Terrion have been really sticky in coverage. Like Terrion, some of his pass interference calls have been pretty ticky tacky. Others, those are DPI. That's fine. That's going to happen when you play as much man as the Lions. So I'd rather, DBs be sticky like that in coverage than be completely out of phase and give up a lot of big plays. You know what I mean? So I think it's going to get better like that. Some of those against DK Metcalf for Carlton were tough because Metcalf is such a physical receiver. Like the way he plays at the top of his route, the way he blocks, getting in and out of breaks, he's going to put his hands on you. It's all subtle, but he's going to do it. So you have to be physical with him. So I'm not going to condemn it, get on Carlton for that either. I'm happy with it. I think it's going to continue to get better. Hopefully Carlton or Terrion gets, better with time and just more reps at the pro level with getting his head around, making a play on the ball. And people are going to keep throwing at him because he's a rookie, and they're going to try him. So we'll see. The sample size is going to keep growing, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Any quarterbacks, they get in trouble, they're going to throw that direction, hoping that a flag comes out, right? The thing that I'm encouraged about Terrion is that he is sticky, and he's right there. He's not. They're not, able to, burn him on a double move or anything like that. He's been right there with the receiver, so I'm happy with that. I keep going back to him and Darius Slay because Darius Slay was our last great corner that we had, and he didn't look great in his first year, and he looked like we had made a mistake, and then he finally put it together. Ideally, we don't have a rookie corner out there, doing all this, but he's our most talented one. He's learning on the job, and we're hoping this pays dividends at the back end of the year, that he's had all this come up. The problem is that once you get tagged with those flags with the refs, they're looking for it, and if they see any little bit, or the receiver plays him up a little bit, they're more apt to throw the flag. So that's the only thing I don't like about it, is that it's going to be hard for him to work out of that because they're going to have a microscope on his play. But, as far as him mentality and everything that he has, I'm not worried about him getting down on himself. So that's a positive right there.
Definitely. He's not one to get lose confidence.
No, the coverage is there. I mean, I don't like the holding as much. I mean, I think that's just because he's a rookie. He's getting used to the speed of the game and everything like that. The coverage is there. He doesn't need to hold. So that, is something that can be cleaned up. As far as the defensive, the pass interferences, I feel like quite a few of them have really kind of been 50-50 about whether they would be called or not. But because he is a rookie and he really is maybe just a second late getting his head around a few times, I'm not worried about it. I think it's something that's going to get cleaned up, and I think he's, the movement is there. The coverage is right there, so I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, and to go back to what you talked about with Carlton Davis on DK Metcalf, Dan Campbell in his press conference later on said, I wasn't worried about that play. They needed to play physical on DK, because if you don't play physical, he's just going to box you out, and you're going to, he's going to catch the ball anyway. So I think that Dan Campbell, not that he's going to call out his player, but he pretty much backed him up right there. And I think that's exactly how they want him playing. They're not going to play a DK Metcalf every week. His body type and body size and strength is very unique for a wide receiver. You play him differently than other receivers. So I'm not worried about that. I think it's going to get better. Hopefully, we can, the Terrion holds, that can be coached out. Just different way of playing it and just more confidence. I could stay with this guy because he's right there. He just needs to keep his hands, to himself, like a kindergartner, right? Keep your hands to yourself.
Yep.
this next question I'm going to pose to you, Morgan, is because at the end of the Seattle game, we get a safety. Okay. And I'm thinking back in my Lions lore, this is how we blow a game, right? But I didn't have those thoughts. I didn't have SOL Lions thoughts. So for you as a Lions fan, being as fan as long as we have, we've seen dramatic losses or whatever. Did you have those thoughts, or when is the last time you had an SOL Lions thought?
I can't even remember, to be honest with you, man, because we've been doing this for a while now. Like even like late 2021, if you remember, they started putting some wins together. They were competitive. And then even early 2022, like they were right there, even though they started like 1-6.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was like the game in Minnesota when Dan kicked the field goal and like, was upset at the podium because he was like, yeah, that was like, they could have won some of those games. So really, I was like, okay, I felt like things were changing. So maybe like early 2021 to answer your question, like when I was just like, holy crap, man. I've never really been a SOL, I don't know, same old line, just because, I don't know, each team is different. Like the only thing that really stayed, the same as all through all these years as a Lions fan is the colors, right? And like the city. Other than that, like the principal owner changed, coaches changed a bunch, GMs changed a bunch. So I try not to think about that, but I feel like the scared, like I know what you're talking about though, that dread, like when bad things happen. It's been probably early 2021, to be honest with you, because by the end of 2022, I was waking up and like, okay, we're probably going to win today. I was starting to expect it. What a good feeling.
Yeah, right.
It's a totally different feeling because even like at the end of that Seattle game, I did not get nervous. I just knew that we were going to win that. And I actually felt really confident in the Arizona game. And then the Rams game, just because you go to overtime, of course you get nervous, but we get the ball and I felt, well, we got the ball, we won. Previous, my ultimate low was the Patricia years, just because I didn't like how anything was being handled.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just are just I felt very negative. I mean, I'm still a huge Lions fan, want them to win every week. But it was just hard to get behind that, where it's very easy to root for these players and this coach and how everything's going on. To me, like the SOL, like stuff, like when they beat Green Bay at the end of that season, like I felt good going into that game, but it just felt like the tide had really turned at that point. But go back to what the Tigers are doing right now, felt very similar to that, except for the Tigers made the playoffs, and we're getting to see that. We feel like if the Lions would have made the playoffs, they'd made a similar type wave in the playoffs that year, just because how they were playing at the time. The Tigers just happened to get in, the right teams lost, and we played amazing. So that's the last time when I think that's when SOL went to bed for me. Nationally, I don't think it's went away yet. I still think there's a lot of people that think we're going to fall flat on our face. A lot of people predict the Lions to fall nationally, but locally, I think a lot of us are past that SOL. I mean, there's going to be some hanger-ons that always talk bad about it, and some Lions fans that always want to seem to want them to lose for some reason. I don't know what that is, but for you, Jacob, where are you at with that? Because I know you're a superstitious guy.
Very extremely, but I've never been into the same old Lions thing. I've never, blamed it on that or whatever. I feel like the people that go to that every single time, even now, there's people, I still see that on Twitter and everything like that. I feel like those are people that are either just not real fans or just people that don't watch all the time, that are just, because it's been like that our whole lives or whatever, that's what they're used to. I mean, I guess we just had a string of bad luck before. We talked about this before, but like, the NFL rules that are really irrelevant until they come up in a Lions game, just the different things that have happened to us with the different plays. I mean, that's all just bad luck. It's just added on to the history. But I mean, honestly, even in the Tampa Bay game, I still I really felt like any minute now we're going to break one of these through. Like, it's going to be fine. We're going to be okay, until it wasn't. And the last couple of years have been like that. We know we have the right people in charge. We have the right team in place, and we're going to play competitive football. Even if we don't come out with a win at the end of the day, we know we're going to play competitive football, and it's not going to be 0-16 where we're getting our butts handed to us and we just, don't even want to look at the train wreck that's about to happen. I mean, that's over with. I hate the whole SOL, same old Lions thing. I hate seeing that.
I do too. I typically mute people if I see it. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't need to hear anything from you anymore. Even during the Patricia years, right? Like I think of that Thanksgiving Day game against Houston. That was embarrassing. But then you see Sheila with her hands in her face. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, because I've never thought like some of these fans back in the day, they're like, oh, the Fords didn't care. No, the Fords cared, man. They just didn't hire the right people. It's pretty simple. A lot of these organizations do it, right? Like you look around, that's really what happens. You just end up not hiring the right people several times over, and you waste a bunch of time and you end up not winning anything. But she, the next morning, she's like, yeah, we're done with this. We're not even going to let them finish the year. I was like, okay, this is because she had been doing smaller things before then to try to do things like, change things up, do things differently. Not that Martha was a bad owner. And, even old man Ford before that was just too loyal to Matt Millen. Like, I'm not going to, wasn't good, but it wasn't for lack of trying, but yeah, I look at it now, and she went through that whole process. I love the process they went through to get Brad Holmes and then Dan Campbell.
I don't know who. Well, Chris Spielman came first, and that's the one that slammed it.
Yeah, it's also exactly. Great point. They like bring in like, hey, well, let's open the checkbook, because he had a good job working for Fox Sports. He was like on one of the broadcast teams, and I always liked it when he called one of our games. I was like, yeah, here we go.
Yeah, we're gonna have someone that's not super biased that
exactly.
time, or give us. I won't say bias, but someone that would give the Lions respect. Everyone else is just like,
go trash us.
Yeah, I'm the fourth team, and I got stuck with the Lions game this week is how I felt. And Chris Spielman would always, talk really good about us. And you could tell that he was rooting for us without overtly rooting for us.
It was funny this week to see Seahawks fans being like, oh my God. Well, first of all, you guys are crazy. We had the Lions had 12 penalties for 100 something yards, but they're like, oh, the refs, the NFL wanted the Lions to win that game. How far have we come, man? Because you guys must not have been football fans very long, because there was a time not long ago where even other fan bases, I remember vividly on Twitter, being like, dang, I'm sorry. Whether it was the batted ball out of the back of the end zone Seattle game.
Yeah.
There's so many, we don't need to bring them up, but you know what I mean?
Not bad memories.
Yeah. It was just funny to hear people think that the NFL favors their golden child, the Lions, so much that they're
they're putting us with the Chiefs. We're getting all the calls.
Yeah.
That's hilarious to me.
As we've dealt with this level of success that the Lions haven't dealt with ever, in our lifetime, this extended level of success, you just realize that those calls, the reason why some of those calls were like that was because we just didn't have the talent to overcome that situation.
True.
So
Insurmountable
I'm not saying that we didn't get the raw end of calls and me screaming at the TV didn't happen, because that happened all the time, and thought, everything's biased. But, I could see Seattle going, because the offensive pass interference at Tyler Lockett, that happens almost on every screenplay, and they just happen to call it. And that really turned then they didn't get the fourth down, and we got the ball, and they didn't score on that. So that was a huge turning point. So I could see that, but I could also look at all the holding and the pass interference on Carlton Davis. I don't know if you ever follow Tom Grassi on YouTube, but
he's hilarious.
Yeah. So he has this bit. He had started this bit last year where he had refs dressed up. He's acting like he's a ref, and the Packers are like, "You're with us," and he's like, "No, I'm with them now," and he's pointing to the Lions. So it just plays on the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, and just the Packers, they were the golden child of the NFC North, and now
he's funny.
Hilarious guy, and it's a funny bit, and I don't know how he is so in tune with every fan base to know to get into it's hard to do that. I mean, we know the Lions fan base and the inside jokes, but for him to know the inside jokes for all these different fan bases and play on it, it's pretty amazing.
He's got to have some inside sources, man, because I agree. He does know. I'm like, oh, how do you know about, he must be on, I don't even know I used to be on Lions Reddit a lot back in the day, but I guess it's probably just Twitter now. So maybe he's just on Lions Twitter stalking.
Yeah, it might be. So, all right. Before we head out of here, let's just talk about the NFC North for a second. Going into it, we thought the Packers were probably going to be our main competition. So my first question to you, Morgan, is: are the Vikings for real? They're 4-0. Are they for real?
I don't know. I need a little bit bigger of a sample size. Like I think they've beaten some tough teams, but the way they play, like the Brian Flores defense, they like to heat you up. They want to get you to those obvious passing downs and then throw the kitchen sink at you. So they're generating pressures, they're generating sacks. I want to see Sam Darnold do this for a little bit bigger of a sample size, just because, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying statistical data has shown us that it's unlikely that a quarterback makes the turnaround that he's thinking about making here. So obviously they have playmakers. They have, Justin Jefferson. They have good players, but I want to see a little bit more. So I think the jury's out. Let's see that Jets Vikings game. That's going to be a juicy
Exactly.
I can't wait
Yes.
for that, because the Jets, their offense stunk it up the other night, but that defense is still legit. So if Sam Darnold wants to prove something, show us that you can throw the ball around against that Jets defense, because, man, it's good.
What about you, Jacob? What's your take on the Vikings?
Well, I feel the exact same way. I kind of, before the season started, I kind of called the Darnold thing. I thought he was going to do really well, just because of Kevin O'Connell and the way the team, that's just the way they want their offense to work. And Sam Darnold's not a bad quarterback. He just has been in a lot of bad situations.
Thanks.
Like you said, he's got Justin Jefferson to throw the ball to. He's got a decent offense. The defense is showing out so far as well. So, I mean, I think me and Jason both picked the Vikings to finish last in the division,
We did,
even behind the Bears. So that, I feel like that may be different now just from what we've seen. But yeah, the Jets game is going to be huge, because if Darnold plays like he has against the Jets, then they're going to be fine for the rest of this season. And, that'll just be another tough test later on. As far as the Packers go, if we're going to go into, with them, because they just lost the game to the Vikings. Jordan Love started 2 games this year, and those are the 2 games that they lost. So, I mean, right now it's still early on, but do you think Jordan Love's worth the contract that he got?
So I know you put out the smart Twitter on Sunday, was like, who's the $55 million quarterback in this game when Darnold or Love?
Well, right. Darnold's lighting it up.
Yeah, first half, especially 28-0. The thing did we see the real Vikings offense in the second half, because the Packers came storming back and Darnold fumbled, and then there was misplaying a punt and stuff like that. So it really looks scary, them being 3-0 and then being up 28-0 in Green Bay against the Packers with Jordan Love. You were thinking they're going to win. I don't know. I still think the Packers defense is going to be tough. I still think they're going to be there at the end. The Lions seemed to handle the Brian Flores defense pretty good last year. So I think for our head-to-head matchups, I think the Lions are going to be fine there on the defensive front. But any team that's got Justin Jefferson is going to be, they could win any given week in the NFL, because throw it up and JJ's going to come down with it. So they have a fighting chance, but I can't have too much belief in Sam Darnold, although Sam Darnold could have just a Baker Mayfield season in him where he did enough to get that next contract. Just if he's not in the right situation, I don't know if I would be wanting to pay him big money next year.
Yeah, that opens up an interesting conversation. And the Minnesota thing, just from a Lions matchup standpoint, I feel good about that, at least on paper, just because the Lions run the ball so well. And if you can stay out of those 3rd and long against Brian Flores, those 3rd and long situations, I think you mitigate a lot of the risk that he, presents with everything that he throws at you. And Goff's a veteran, that helps too.
Right.
So, yeah. And then the Bears, I don't know. We're still, we're going to need a way bigger sample size to see what Caleb Williams is really looking like. The only thing that's tough is their offensive line has been playing some pretty bad football. And I feel like that makes it really tough to evaluate these rookie quarterbacks, man, because as y'all know, it's hard for a veteran to stand back there and get, beat and teed off on over and over again, let alone a rookie.
And that's what makes it puzzling why they drafted Roma Dunze, because they could have got another solid offensive lineman. And I mean, did they trade for Keenan Allen after the draft or before the draft? I can't remember the timing on it, but they had DJ Moore, and they're going to get Keenan Allen. Getting that extra weapon just seemed, they were running the ball pretty good last year. It just seems like to get protect the quarterback, your rookie quarterback, but that seems like a Bears type move to me.
Yeah,
What the
right.
Lions used to do, get all the skill players, and
Trenches are messed up.
And the trenches are messed up. I mean, that's, what was happening to Stafford. He's just getting constantly sacked, and you can have if you can have all the toys on the outside, but if you don't have enough time, it doesn't really matter.
Yep.
So
sure.
I wasn't super excited about Caleb Williams. He just rubs me the wrong way. And so it doesn't surprise me what's going on with the Bears, and I'm okay, frankly, with them losing.
Right.
I hear you.
Yep. So, all right, Morgan, thank you for coming on, spending your time with us. Sorry you had to break up your film session.
Oh, no problem.
Thanks again, Morgan, for coming out, and go Lions.